On the surface, Three's Company looked like pure fun, one apartment, three roommates, and endless misunderstandings behind that iconic swinging door. But looking back today, the latter feels heavier. Behind Jack's pratfalls, Janet's calm, Chrissy's innocence, and Furley's wild panic were real lives marked by sudden tragedy, illness, and painful exits, and final chapters fans never saw coming. This is Three's Company Then and Now, where what happened after the laughter faded hurts more than the jokes ever healed. Jack Tripper, who was the who made panic like poetry, a chef with flying arms, terrified eyes, and a heart so warm that the wildest misunderstandings still felt human. John Ritter, born September 17, 1948, was 28 when Three's Company began in 1977, turning Jack into one of classic sitcom history's greatest physical comedians. Jack was always slipping, spinning, hiding, lying badly, and trying to survive another disaster inside that Santa Monica apartment. But Ritter made him more than just a clown. Beneath the pratfalls was kindness, a nervous decency, and a desperate need to keep the people he loved safe from harm. That is why his loss still feels so abrupt. Ritter died on September 11, 2003, at only 54. He suffered an aortic dissection after a career that had already brought him a Primetime Emmy and a Golden Globe for Three's Company. He later stayed beloved through 8 Simple Rules and many screen roles, but Jack Tripper remained the image fans returned to. The fall, the face, the impossible timing. Jack Tripper endures because John Ritter made chaos feel innocent, and innocence like that hurts to lose. Larry Dallas is the trouble that knocks before it enters. The neighbor with a grin, a scheme, and the kind of confidence that always arrives 5 minutes before total disaster. Richard Kline, born April 29, 1944, was 33 when Three's Company began in 1977, making Larry more than a smooth-talking neighbor. Larry is selfish, charming, slippery, and often completely wrong, but he is the show's social engine, constantly pulling Jack into bad ideas, pushing the apartment toward absolute chaos, while remaining the kind of friend people easily forgive, because the laughter comes so naturally. Kline understood that Larry could not just be sleazy. He had to be fun enough for viewers to want him back. In 2026, Richard Kline is 82, and his life after the show remains closely tied to performance, from television and theater to voiceover work and fan events. He also appeared in both Three's Company spin-offs, keeping Larry connected to that larger retro sitcom world. Larry Dallas endures because Kline made bad advice feel irresistible, and every sitcom apartment needs that one friend who makes peace impossible. Ralph Furley is insecurity dressed in loud polyester, the landlord who struts into every room as if confidence can cover the fact that he understands almost nothing. Don Knotts, born July 21, 1924, was 55 when he joined Three's Company in 1979, bringing Furley a nervous comic electricity that completely changed the rhythm of the show. Furley is ridiculous because he desperately wants to be modern, romantic, and worldly, but every single reaction gives him away. The wide eyes, stiff posture, and sudden panic turn simple misunderstandings into classic television moments. Knotts died on February 24, 2006, at 81. After a career that had already made him a comedy legend. Long before Furley, he won multiple Emmy Awards as Barney Fife on The Andy Griffith Show, carrying that same anxious brilliance into films and family comedies. That history made Furley more than a simple replacement landlord. He was another version of the frightened little man, trying to look powerful. Ralph Furley endures because Don Knotts made insecurity hilarious, visible, and strangely lovable. Terry Alden was the roommate who had to step into a beloved formula and prove the apartment could survive change. Priscilla Barnes, born December 7, 1953, was 28 when she joined Three's Company in 1981, bringing Terry a sharper, steadier energy than earlier blonde characters. As a practical nurse, Terry could handle real emergencies at the hospital, yet still get pulled into the ridiculous, door-slamming disasters of Jack's living room. That balance mattered. She was never there to simply copy Chrissy or Cindy. She brought a more adult tone to the trio, while keeping the door-slamming cows alive. In 2026, Priscilla Barnes is 72. Her career after the show spanned film, television, and cult favorites, including License to Kill, Mallrats, and a memorable run on Jane the Virgin. Her time on Three's Company was not always easy, but her character earned a lasting place, with fans discovering the later seasons in reruns. Terry Alden endures because Barnes made the new roommate feel composed and quietly strong. Meanwhile, Helen Roper was loneliness, wrapped in bright caftans. She was a woman whose jokes about marriage always carried a sharp sting beneath the laughter. Audra Lindley, born September 24, 1918, was 58 when she first appeared as Helen in 1976, giving Three's Company one of its most human comic figures. Helen was funny because she was blunt, colorful, and completely impossible to ignore, but she hurts because her marriage to Stanley is full of rejection disguised as routine, leaving her craving romance, touch, and proof that she still matters. Lindley made that deep longing visible without turning Helen into a victim. She stayed sharp, playful, and incredibly alive. Lindley died on October 16th. In 1997, she passed away at 79, leaving behind a long career in soap operas, theater, and the spin-off, The Roppers, where Helen's constant need for affection took center stage. Looking back at her scenes, they feel less like cheap jokes about a frustrated wife and more like small, raw confessions hidden inside a classic sitcom. Helen Roper remains unforgettable because Audra Lindley made deep longing feel hilariously, painfully real. Stanley Roper is that constant grumble from downstairs, the landlord who swears he sees everything while totally missing the emotional truth right under his nose. Norman Fell, born March 24, 1924, was 52 when he first played Stanley in 1976, transforming everyday suspicion into a comedic masterpiece. Stanley is cheap, lazy, judgmental, and absolutely terrified of change, yet Fell made him impossible to look away from because his physical comedy was so spot on. His screen time with Helen gave the sitcom a sharper, more mature edge, depicting a marriage of constant bickering, avoidance, and quiet moments of vulnerability they couldn't admit. Fell passed away on December 14, 1998 at 74, leaving a legacy that reached way beyond that famous apartment building. He starred in major films like The Graduate, Bullet, Catch-22, and Ocean's 11, earning deep respect as a character actor before finding sitcom immortality. Spin-off series The Ropers let him carry the character into his own spotlight, proving how much viewers loved that iconic grumpy face. Stanley Roper remains unforgettable because Norman Fell made being annoyed feel incredibly precise, funny, and deeply sad. Lana Shields is pure desire walking through the front door before Jack Tripper can run. Anne Wedgworth, born January 21st, 1934, was 45 when she joined Three's Company in 1979, giving Lana a bold confidence that completely flipped the show's romantic tension upside down. Lana was glamorous, bold, and entirely unapologetic about her pursuit of Jack, leaving him more helpless than any misunderstanding ever could. The comedy works because Wedgworth never played her as just some desperate older woman. Lana is undeniably funny, but she also represents a woman who refuses to apologize for her desires, age, or sexuality. Wedgworth passed away on November 16, 2017 at 83, ending a highly respected career across Broadway, film, and television. She won a Tony Award for Chapter 2, and later reached millions on Evening Shade, using her natural warmth and earthy humor. Lana Shields stands out because Wedgworth made her romantic pursuit feel fearless, hilarious, and surprisingly dignified. Chrissy Snow is pure sunshine with a twist, the blonde roommate whose total innocence drove the iconic comedy of Suzanne Somers. Born October 16, 1946, she was 30 when the show debuted in 1977. Elevating Chrissy far beyond a basic stereotype. While Chrissy's logic was completely backwards, Somers gave her a genuine sweetness and childlike sincerity that made viewers love rather than mock her. That is why her sudden departure felt so heavy. Somers passed on October 15, 2023 at 76, a day before her birthday, after fighting breast cancer. Her post-sitcom life became a masterclass in reinvention, spanning step-by-step books, health ventures, and The Thigh Master, which made her a massive business success. Yet the intense salary dispute that cut her run short remains a legendary piece of television history. A sharp reminder of when fame and money collide, Chrissy endures because Somers made innocence profitable. Vulnerable, and completely unforgettable. Frank Angelino is the boss pulling Jack Tripper from roommate drama into a high-pressure commercial kitchen. Jordan Charney, born April 1st, 1937, was in his early 40s when he entered Jack's culinary world, bringing a gruff authority that made the restaurant feel like a real workplace. Frank is demanding, tough, and rarely impressed, which is exactly why his character works. He keeps reminding Jack that big dreams require more than just charm. They require discipline, timing, and sweat. Today, in 2026, Jordan Charney is 89, following a long, respected career as a reliable character actor on stage and screen. Fans likely recognize him from The Doctors, Hill Street Blues, and Law and Order, alongside countless guest spots where he delivered sharp authority. Angelino endures because Charney made his stern leadership feel tough but fair. Mike the bartender is the silent observer at the Regal Beagle, watching from behind the counter, while the trio turns the pub into a theater of bad schemes and romantic chaos. Brad Blaisdell, born March 15th, 1949, was in his early 30s during his run on Three's Company. He gave Mike a relaxed, down-to-earth vibe that made the Regal Beagle feel like a genuine local pub. He never tried to steal the spotlight. Instead, he grounded the scenes, pouring drinks, quietly listening, and offering subtle reactions, while keeping his cool as the rest of the gang spun into absolute madness. Blaisdell passed on December 26, 2018 at 69 from cancer, giving the minor role a quiet, bittersweet feeling. Beyond the comedy, he popped up in dramas like Dynasty and ER, bringing natural grit to supporting roles without demanding the spotlight. Mike stands out because Blaisdell made the background feel alive. Sometimes, the quiet observer behind the bar sees everything clearly. Dean Travers is the rigid authority figure who transforms Jack's culinary school into a recipe for absolute panic. William Pearson, born July 17, 1926, was 51 when he first appeared on Three's Company. He gave Travers the sharp, clipped discipline of a man who could ruin any day with just one disappointed look. The character matters because Jack's life is about more than roommates and landlords. He has real ambition, and Travers stands right between Jack and the future he desperately wants. That makes the comedy so much sharper. Every misunderstanding with Travers risks far more than simple embarrassment. It risks Jack's dream of becoming a top chef. Pearson passed away on August 27, 2004. At 78, after a career reaching back to classic Hollywood. He had appeared in Stalag 17 and dozens of roles that capitalized on his dry authority and old-school timing. By the time he stepped into Jack's world, he brought the heavy presence of an older acting generation. Dean Travers endures because Pearson made stern disapproval feel formal, hilarious, and incredibly powerful. Felipe Gomez is a walking pressure cooker. He is the restaurant worker whose nerves boil over whenever Jack's life gets chaotic. Gino Conforti, born January 30th, 1932, was 49 when he joined Three's Company. He gave Philip a frantic, hyper energy that made the restaurant kitchen feel just as chaotic as the apartment. A Felipe matters because Angelino's restaurant opens up Jack's world. It proves that trouble follows Jack to work, where orders, demanding bosses, and dynamic co-workers turn into their own messy farce. Conforti portrays Philippa with frantic urgency, razor-sharp timing, and the exhausted vibe of a guy barely keeping the dinner rush from falling apart. Today in 2026, Conforti is 94, following a massive career spanning stage, screen, and voiceover work. He starred on Broadway in Fiddler on the Roof and later voiced characters in shows like Hercules. That theatrical training explains the perfect timing and rhythm of his cartoonish reactions. Felipe stands out because Conforti made workplace panic feel musical, sweat-drenched, and utterly believable to audiences. Linda is one of those brief faces on Three's Company who reminds everyone how many future TV legends passed right through Jack Tripper's orbit. Anne Shedden, born January 8, 1949, was 29 when she appeared on the show. Though Linda was never a central character, Shedden brought a grounded, natural presence that made even a minor guest spot feel completely real. In a comedy fueled by dates, wacky neighbors, and endless misunderstandings, minor characters like Linda make the apartment feel tied to a bigger reality. They show up, shift the comedic rhythm, and leave behind a memorable mark on the sitcom's history. Today in 2026, and Shedden is 77, her biggest TV breakthrough came as Kate Tanner on Aleph, where she made a bizarre alien premise feel grounded, warm, and domestic. She eventually stepped back from the grind of acting to build a quiet, creative career in interior design. Linda endures because Shedden's quick guest spot serves as a cool bridge between classic sitcom eras, the sort of minor role that gets more fascinating with hindsight. Reverend Luther Snow represents traditional authority in the apartment, a deeply protective, old-school father desperate to shield his daughter from a modern world he barely understands. Peter Mark Richmond, born April 16, 1927, was 51 when he first debuted as Chrissy S. Minister Dad, balancing strict moral certainty with deep parental worry. His visits are crucial because the comedy thrives on the tension between reality and what conservative guests assume is going on. To Reverend Snow, Jack, Janet, and Chrissy's living situation looks like clear proof that the modern world has officially lost its mind. Richmond passed away on January 14, 2021, at 93 after a long career in television, film, and theater. Fans easily remember him from Dynasty and Beverly Hills 90210, The Twilight Zone, and dozens of guest spots where he brought gripping authority to the screen. Reverend Snow endures because Richmond made stern disapproval feel strict, deeply loving, and trapped between generations. Arlene Price is one of those women who breezes through Jack's world with confidence, immense charm, and enough cool self-possession to make the surrounding chaos feel even more hilarious. Sandra Curry, born January 11, 1947, was 30 when she appeared on Three's Company. She brought Arlene a polished ease that fit the show's endless chaos of awkward dates and near disasters. Guest characters like Arlene are crucial because they act as comedic sparks. They crash in the apartment, rattle Jack's nerves, expose a lie, and keep the wild episode spinning. Curry made that brief spark feel incredibly smart rather than disposable. Today, in 2026, she is 79, following a long career in film and TV. Modern viewers might recognize her from the Hangover films, while classic TV fans remember her guest spots on hits like Magnum, P.I., and Murder, She Wrote. She has also remained quite active in philanthropic circles, maintaining a fulfilling life far beyond a single classic sitcom credit. Arlene endures because Curry made a quick flirtation feel confident, fully mature, and much sharper than the script even required. Dr. Phil Green is one of Jeffrey Tambor's earliest Three's Company roles, a flustered authority figure who walks into the roommate's chaos and immediately realizes sanity has left the room. Tambor, born July 8, 1944, was in his late 30s when he appeared, even in these quick guest spots. He displayed the brilliant comic discomfort that eventually defined his entire career. His characters always seemed official, stiff, or highly self-important, making it incredibly funny when jackass lies and wild misunderstandings began pulling them apart. In 2026, Tambor is 81, following a career starring in Arrested Development and The Larry Sanders Show, and Transparent, acclaimed work that brought him massive industry awards and major visibility. But his later public controversies complicated his legacy, proving to everyone that raw talent and a public reputation do not always age in simple ways. As we look back at his early Three's Company spots, a strange clarity emerges. The sharp timing, irritation, and bruised ego were already locked in. Dr. Green still stands out because Tambor made authority feel shaky, hilarious, and just one misunderstanding away from total collapse. Barbara Howard is just one of many passing faces entering the show's revolving door of bad dates, wild misunderstandings, and quick complications. Tafe O'Connell, born May 14, 1951. She was in her late 20s during her appearance, bringing a natural ease that classic sitcoms absolutely relied on. In this kind of show, even minor roles had major jobs, spark chemistry, trigger wild confusion, and force the main cast to show off their funniest flaws. O'Connell delivered on that, while building a career that eventually steered her into a very different corner of pop culture. By 2026, she reached 75, with sci-fi fans knowing her best from Galaxy of Terror, a cult space horror hit that earned her a loyal following. She kept working across both TV and film, becoming one of those versatile actors who bridge the gap between sitcom nostalgia and cult horror fame. Barbara Howard lives on because O'Connell's quick stop in Jack's world was just one piece of a much larger, wilder journey through Hollywood. Mrs. Alden might seem like a minor character on paper, but actress Mina Kolb brought a massive comedy pedigree to that brief appearance. Born June 7, 1926, Kolb was 55 when she booked the gig. She brought the razor-sharp timing of an artist seasoned by theater, improv, and decades of delivering punchlines. Bit parts like Mrs. Alden matter because old-school television relied on familiar faces who could pop in for 3 minutes and flesh out the entire world. Kolb was exactly one of those trusted faces. In 2026, at 99 years old, she remains a living bridge to classic American comedy. Throughout her career, she trained with the Second City and graced iconic series like The Mary Tyler Moore Show and Mad About You, delivering dry with absolute precision. Her time on Three's Company was short, but it represents a lifetime of comedic mastery. Mrs. Alden stands out because minor Kolb gave even a minor character real lived in depth. Roland Wood represents another fleeting face who added real texture to the sitcom's universe, proving that this television landscape stretched far beyond the trio's apartment, their local pub, and Jackson's constant meltdowns. Macon McCalman, born December 30, 1932, was 47 when he appeared, bringing the effortless authority of a true working actor. These minor roles do not need to take over an episode. They ground the physical comedy, giving the chaotic apartment a normal world to clash with. McCalman died in November 2005 at 72, following complications from multiple strokes, ending a long run of steady, reliable screen roles. His credits included Deliverance, Hill Street Blues, and Designing Women, where his southern charm and subtle intensity made every minor character stand out. Roland Wood lives on because McCalman tied a brief guest spot to a rich lifetime career. It's a secret strength we often overlook in vintage television. Cindy Snow stepped in under an impossible amount of pressure. A sweet, clumsy cousin tasked with saving a show already rocked by behind-the-scenes drama. Jenna Lee Harrison, born June 12, 1958, was 22 when she joined the cast in 1980. She gave Cindy a sweet, nervous energy that helped smooth over one of television's biggest cast changes. Cindy was never meant to be Chrissy, succeeding only when allowed to be different, awkward, clumsy, and desperate to please. She was always one misstep away from absolute chaos. Harrison made all that physical comedy feel completely natural, rather than just a cheap sitcom gimmick. By 2026, she is 67, having followed up her comedy days with a major dramatic run as Jamie Ewing on Dallas. She later moved into commercials, minor roles, and a quiet private life. Yet Cindy remains linked to a crucial moment in TV history, when fans had to decide if the roommate dynamic could change and still feel like home. Cindy Snow endures because Harrison made that clumsy vulnerability feel gentle and incredibly easy to forgive. Janet Wood was always the anchor of the apartment, keeping things grounded while her roommates made mass confusion look like a full-time job. Joyce DeWitt, born April 23, 1949, was 27 when the show premiered in 1977, giving Janet the sharp, practical mind that kept the crazy fast grounded. Janet was fiercely loyal, independent, and usually the only roommate who realized how close their setup was to crashing down. She was never just a sounding board for Jack and Chrissy. She provided the vital balance, playing the sensible friend whose simple eye roll was funnier than any written punchline. In 2026, DeWitt turned 77, having embraced a much quieter lifestyle than the frantic Hollywood fame that Three's Company originally brought her. Following 8 successful seasons, she stepped out of the blinding spotlight, eventually returning via theater, occasional interviews, and selective screen work. This quiet distance gives her character a nostalgic weight today, serving as a direct connection to a beloved sitcom era that aged alongside its fans. Janet Wood endures because DeWitt made practical common sense feel warm, sweet, and absolutely essential. And with that, our favorite apartment door swings shut. Three's Company ultimately gave audiences hearty laughs, silly lies, crowded rooms, and characters who made chaos feel safe for 30 minutes. But time changed the actors behind those laughs in ways no sitcom ending could soften. Some kept entertaining audiences for decades, while others quietly stepped away. And some have passed on, leaving behind a void that makes every rerun feel a bit more bittersweet. For those who felt the warmth of that classic Santa Monica apartment return, Rewind 1960s continues to deliver then, and now stories from the iconic shows that shaped pop culture